All right. All righty. Hello, everybody. Welcome in. I'm going to wait just a moment to make sure that everybody loads in who's going to be here today. We've got a couple more people joining the waiting room. Hello, I'm Duncan. I'm one of the admission counselors here at Reed. Excited to chat with you all today. And thank you for taking the time out of your day to come hear from our awesome professors here at Reed. I hope you all are having good weather where you are. It's sort of blustery and almost stormy here in the Pacific Northwest at the moment. Maybe it's drizzling in Portland. I'm not in Portland at the moment.
It's actually not bad. It's not bad here.
Okay. Okay, good. It's like on the verge of rain here in Washington. But I hope wherever you all are around the world, around the United States, you're having beautiful weather, beautiful springtime weather. Okay, so it's 4:01. The people joining have slowed down a little bit. So I will say once again, hello everybody. My name is Duncan. I am an assistant dean of admission here at Reed, and I'm excited to chat with you guys today and chat with our professors. So just a quick introduction of how this is going to work. I'll talk for a minute and then I'll hand it over to them, and then they have some things to say about their department, the Greek, Latin, and Ancient Mediterranean Studies Department. And then we will do a sort of long Q&A thing. And let's see, do I have anything else to say? The last thing I'll say is that for the Q&A portion, if you'd like to put your questions in the Zoom chat, then that'll be a great way for us to organize. Make sure to keep them all in a list there, of course. And it will also mean that I can maybe synthesize some questions together if that's necessary. But in any case, why don't I pass it over to Tom and Ellen, our awesome professors here today.
All right, so welcome everyone. So just to introduce myself first, my name is Tom Londvater. I am a professor in the Department of Greek, Latin, and Ancient Mediterranean Studies, also known as GLAM, which is the best acronym. And I'm also chair of the department this year. I'm the archaeologist in the department. And so my own research focuses on the Eastern Mediterranean in the what's called the Hellenistic period. So about 300-ish BCE up until the kind of final Roman conquest in the last very end of the last century BCE. And I especially focus on Egypt and the island of Cyprus, which was actually part of the Egyptian Empire, the Ptolemaic Egyptian Empire at that point. I work with especially issues of identity and material culture as it relates to cultural identity and cultural change during this period, and also burial practices, especially. Excavated a lot of mortuary sites, and I'm interested in how mortuary practices relate to identity expression at this time. And with that, I will hand it over to Ellen.
Tom, how long you been at Reed?
Oh yeah, 2015. Yeah, so I'm in my however many, 6, 7, something like that years. I don't do math. I'm in GLAM. So
come on, do math. Anyway, hi everybody. My name's Ellen Millander. I've been at Reed since 2002, so long time. And I'm Reed's ancient historian. Not ancient. You're all supposed to laugh. But no, I'm not ancient, I hope. So I teach Greek and Latin, all levels, ancient history. My specialty, which I mean, what Tom does is very cool. And I love what I do. I'm a specialist in ancient Sparta, which makes me extremely weird because I'm a Jewish woman working on ancient Sparta. I think I'm the only one on the planet. And I publish on pretty much every aspect of ancient Spartan society. So I have a bunch of publications in the works. I work on certain authors working on ancient Sparta, like the 4th century historian Xenophon. I have an article on luxury. Plato and Aristotle accuse Spartan women of being quote unquote luxurious. So I have a paper coming out on that, and et cetera. And Tom, we can also quickly talk about teaching. So like at Reed this year, I taught in the fall, I taught a course on women in the ancient world. And then all my other courses this year have been language. So like this semester, I'm teaching Homer, which is incredibly fun. How many of you like the Odyssey? Have you read the Odyssey? Okay, book 9, when that Cyclops is crunching, you think he's the bad guy. He's really not the bad guy. And my students were reading just this week in Greek. We read the scene where Odysseus and his men stick the stake in the Cyclops' eyeball. And the Greek is amazing because like the Greek literally sounds like crackling, popping, and hissing. And then I'm also teaching beginning Latin next year. I have Roman history in the fall. I'm teaching a course on the Athenians and the other in the spring. And I'm also teaching advanced Greek, advanced Latin, and beginning Latin again. So Tom, what about your teaching?
Yeah, so I should. So all of us in the department, and I'll talk a little bit more about the department generally in a second. We all kind of teach across like many different aspects of the ancient Mediterranean. So I have taught intro Greek and before I taught intro Latin in the fall of last year, as well as intermediate Greek, where we actually read a Hippocratic medical text called Airs, Waters, Places, which is about environmental influence on disease and culture as well, sort of like Greek environmental determinism, and sort of very interesting kind of ethnographic look at the Scythians, these sort of horse nomads on the steppes of Central Asia, which are they have some really interesting ideas about, which was really a lot of fun to read. I also taught archaeology of the Greek world in the fall, which was looking at not just the archaeology of Greece, but kind of the broader Eastern Mediterranean in the last millennium BCE. So we looked at stuff in Greece, but we also looked at Cyprus. We looked at Phoenicia and Phoenicians and their colonies throughout the Mediterranean, as well as Greek colonies in Sicily, southern Italy, and the like, and really kind of concentrating on the notion of exchange at this time and kind of movement of people across the Mediterranean. This semester, I'm actually teaching 2 sections of one class because there were so many people that wanted to take it. So I'm teaching the archaeology of death and burial, where we're looking at it's more thematic. So we're actually looking at, the course is broken up into sections on the body, the grave, and the cemetery. And we're looking at different case studies using ancient Mediterranean and ancient Near Eastern examples, and kind of interrogating what we can do by looking at what do we actually get from grave monuments, for example, and grave markers. Like, how do we think through this theoretically? And on Tuesday, we're actually going to be talking about human sacrifice and its relationship to really elaborate burials. We're actually looking at the Great Death Pit of Ur, which is in Mesopotamia, which is one of the more interestingly named things we're going to be looking at this year. But it's been a lot of fun. It's the first time I've taught it, and it's been really great. It's been really, and the students have really gotten into it. So I want to talk a little bit more about just like the department itself, and sort of like, okay, what is GLAM? What is Greek, Latin, Ancient Mediterranean Studies? And so it is what our department does is the interdisciplinary study of the ancient Mediterranean world. And so what is the ancient Mediterranean world? And so this can be pretty broadly conceived. So at the core of what we study are, yes, like the Greeks and the Romans. These are sort of like the traditional subjects of ancient Mediterranean studies. But the ancient Mediterranean is really broader than that. You can really think about it as all of the countries surrounding the Mediterranean Sea. So all of North Africa, Morocco, Algeria, Libya, Egypt, the Levant, Israel, Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, into Turkey, as well as, of course, Italy, France, Spain. So the whole region, right? But we're also dealing with the world of the Roman Empire, which extends even further than that into Northwestern Europe, into Britain, where I always kind of make fun of Roman Britain because it's like, the far end of nowhere. But it's actually really quite interesting to talk about. It really is. But so it's this really kind of hugely geographically and culturally expansive world. And we're looking at, over the course of several thousand years on either end of, BCE AD. So it's been really it's really kind of an amazing and expansive geographically and culturally. And it's also very diverse in the approach. So I'm an archaeologist, so I study the ancient Mediterranean world through material culture, through the material remains of past civilizations, through excavation, museum work, and the like. Ellen's an ancient historian. And we also do work with language and especially with Greek, ancient Greek and Latin, and studying texts, literature, documents, and the like in their original language to gain insight into these cultures. I don't know, Ellen, if there was anything you wanted to add on.
Right. So Tom, this may be a good time to introduce the other people. So as Tom said, I mean, the beauty of GLAM, and I brag about it, but it's one of the reasons why I ended up majoring in classics as an undergrad is we don't do everything. Like you can't take math with us. Really sorry. You can't study biology with us, but we're interdisciplinary. So if you like archaeology, you like material culture, I'm a historian. But I'm a historian who works a lot on text. My students also reread inscriptions. We do a little bit of material culture. I'm bringing some material culture into one of my courses next year on how the 5th century Athenians and the idea of the other, the medical other, the gendered other, the sexualized other, the ethnic other, etc. And then we've got 3 other colleagues who are more focused on literature. So I'll tell you about 2 of them. Tom will mention the third. So Nigel Nicholson is a specialist in Greek literature. His real specialty is Greek archaic. So we're talking about like archaic early Greek poetry. He works particularly on a poet known as Pindar. And Sonia Sabnis, and Nigel's been here the longest out of all of us. He's even here 5 years longer than me. Sonia came in, I think, 6 years after me. Sonia Sabnis works on later Latin, the Latin novel. And her specialty is a guy named Apuleius. Who's really interesting, an author hailing from North Africa. Tom?
And our last faculty member is Alice who is the most recent addition to the faculty. She started in 2020, I believe, which is time ceased to kind of have any kind of meaning for a while. And she works on Latin epic, especially later Latin epic of the 1st century CE has been her particular specialty. And she's been teaching also in Humanities 110, which we also contribute to, which is the 1st year course that all 1st year students at Reed take. So we all also participate in that course. So we also interact with students in that environment as well. Yeah.
So should we talk about the majors? The
Yes.
major lines?
Yes.
So I'll do the old one since I'm the old one here. Okay, so everyone, our department has 2 different major lines, major tracks. So the traditional one is what we call, it used to be classics, we're now GLAM. You have to admit, GLAM is the best acronym. Other people on the campus are very jealous of GLAM. So our traditional track is what we call Greek and Latin. And so this track is more focused on literature and language. So for this major, I'll just be real quick, and I can give more information if you want it. Students have to do 3 years of one language, 1 year of the other, at least 1 year of the other, and then take 2 courses in either archaeology or ancient history. And then all of our students I'm not going to go into details, but do a junior, a paper, it's called the junior qual during their junior year, and everyone at Reed writes a senior thesis. So that's sort of that's the traditional major. And then we have another one, which Tom and I disagree on the pronunciation of it.
Yes, it's History and Archaeology of the Ancient Mediterranean. I call it HAM. And
sorry.
So this is the track for students who are more interested in the kind of history archaeology side as opposed to the language. And so the bulk of the coursework is focused on history and archaeology courses. You take 2 ancient history, 2 archaeology, and then you do still do ancient language, though less of it. We actually have slightly revised requirements. We're going into place next year, which I believe it's going to be 3 credits of a language, of one language. And then you also do other work. You can do more language work. You can do more courses in history, archaeology, or other courses in translation that we're going to be offering actually starting next year. We're going to have a course on classical mythology and ancient Greek athletics, actually, in addition to the normal ancient history and archaeology offerings. And there's also the possibility of doing some interdisciplinary work, like you can take some courses in anthropology, and with our approval, that could be counted, or art history, depending on what your own interests are. If you're more on the archaeology side, the history side, if you're there's all sorts of, we're flexible with that as well, to kind of cater to what people's interests are. And so those are the two kind of major tracks, and we get pretty kind of evenly divided where people kind of want to end up, just depending totally on their interest. And I'd say a lot of people end up just doing a lot, even if they're ham, they do a lot of language, for example, because they just get really interested in really into the Greek or Latin, and they just keep doing more, which is always a good thing. We do also have minors available. So we have minors in Latin, minors in Greek, and a minor in Greek and Latin. So you can take a certain number of courses in just Latin, just Greek, or if you really are gung-ho and you are doing both, you can actually get a minor in both Greek and Latin together. So, and I think actually our department did have the first registered minor ever at Reed was a Latin minor, which I'm quite proud of, when we instituted minors just a few years ago.
And we also have a joint major with religion. And usually we have one student like a year, typically. I don't know if we do, I don't think we do this year.
Not at the moment, yeah.
Right, but typically, again, so this is a student has to fulfill certain requirements in both our department and the Department of Religion, and we get along really well with the Department of Religion. We share a hallway with them, and we have a lounge where our students hang out together at the end of the hall. And so maybe, Tom, maybe you should talk a little bit quickly about like departmental culture, or do you want to talk about study abroad?
Yeah, I mean, since we're on, we can do departmental culture first. I mean, we get along well. Our department gets along really well. We all work really well together, and we also work really closely with our students. And I don't know, I like to pride ourselves on the way we work with students, how closely we work with students, and how much we are supportive of our students. And I think this is one advantage of, like, we're a smaller department. We have we're not kind of a huge department like bio or something, but this also means we give our students a lot of one-on-one attention, both in classes, during the qual process, during the thesis process. I would say that we get students really like that about GLAM and about our department. In terms of study abroad, this is something which is finally going to be happening again. It's so exciting. So we have a couple of different avenues for study abroad. We have the traditional semester study abroad programs, and we also have some stuff that's done in the summer as well. So I don't know, Ellen, do you want to talk about our study abroad?
I'll talk about the Centro.
Yep.
So one program that we're like the poster child of Reed for study abroad. We, I think, send more students on to study abroad than I think most other departments. We see it as fitting in well with what we're doing with students. It's not in a way, again, it's not like getting in the way of the major. We see this as a natural continuation of what we're doing. One of the programs we routinely send students to is the Centro, otherwise known as the Intercollegiate Center for Classical Studies in Rome. I went there back in, and I know you're gonna be horrified, 1985. And the program is amazing. I mean, it's an absolutely amazing program where you're with about 30, 35 other students, and you're studying, and you're not just studying Latin, and not just, you can have Greek, but there's a course called the Ancient City course where you literally are out constantly. You're learning about Rome, Roman history, Roman archaeology, Roman topography on the ground, both within Rome, all over Italy. And then there are two big trips, and it's changed recently, but traditionally one of the big trips was to Sicily, which is remarkable. And it's like, imagine Greece, like Greek monuments, but in an Italian landscape, like cool beyond belief. And then the other trip that they used to take, and I'm not sure again, it depends on who's leading the program, was down to southern Italy to go to like Pompeii and Herculaneum. Great program. Another program that we tend to send students on is CYA. Tom, you want to talk about CYA?
Yeah, so this is college year in Athens. And so this is the kind of the range of courses you can take at CYA is a bit broader than at the Centro. It's because it's a more expansive program. There's also courses in modern Greek or kind of modern Greek history or things that can kind of fulfill other kind of requirements in the curriculum. It's not strictly ancient Mediterranean focused like the Centro is, but there's a lot there. We have a lot of students who go to CYA and they do, they really get into, for example, like really kind of interesting. I always think of the archaeology courses because you can actually, you spend your archaeology course there is you go to the National Museum or you go around Athens and you're doing stuff on site, right? This is the advantage of being abroad. And this is something that really can't be replicated in a classroom. The ability to go and visit sites and actually get a sense of like the actual landscape where something is situated is just something that you can't get a sense of. And this is why it's so crucial, I think, for people to study abroad if you can and if you want to. I think it's something that we want to make happen. But yeah, CYA, you get a kind of a wider range of things, but I think there's also trips there also like they're built in depending on what semester you're going. I think in the fall they always go to Crete. No matter what like else you're doing, you go to Crete, which is amazing. Crete is fantastic. And then in the spring you go up to northern Greece and Thessaloniki, which is a fabulous sort of later especially like Roman late antique city, but then also you have these kind of fabulous tombs of the Macedonian kings at Vergina are right nearby. So you have some really kind of amazing stuff in the north as well. And so these are the two main ones we send to. Sometimes students go to other places as well, but these are really the kind of the two main places that students like to go to.
Yeah, we've had students go to Oxford. We've had students go to Trinity in Dublin, Cork, University of Cork in Ireland as well. But yes, but I would say these are our two standard programs.
Yeah.
We used to have one in Cairo, but
I think AUC is, we still have like we still have an affiliation with AUC, which happens. I don't think people haven't been going there recently, but it's not off the table. Also, so we mentioned stuff that we do during the summer. So some students go and they want to do more kind of summer language work, which is great. We get people will like, we try to help support students if they want to go take Greek and Latin someplace over the summer just to do some more. And also summer is the traditional time for students to go get archaeological fieldwork experience. And so the many students have gone, I've helped as the archaeologist, I've kind of helped place students into field schools, especially a number of students went to a site called Gabii, which is just outside of Rome in Italy for a number of years. And that's still an ongoing project, which people have applied to and want to go to. I also co-direct a project on Cyprus at the site of Vigla, which is just outside the modern city of Larnaca. It's a Hellenistic period of military fortification dating to just after the time of Alexander the Great. And so it's really interesting for me because it's when Cyprus it's like this transition from kind of independent city kingdoms there to being incorporated ultimately into the Ptolemaic Egyptian Empire. And so it's right from it dates precisely to this time. And it's really wonderfully preserved. And, there's floors with just pots lying flat on them. It's kind of amazing. And this year, I've been able to take Reed students in the past. In 2019, I took 6 Reed students there, and I've been unable to go back in 2020 and 2021. However, I am planning on bringing 6 students this year. So 6 students have been accepted to go this year. And so I will be bringing them pending final permit approval and all of that. I will be and with may the COVID gods look away or something, that we will be able to go. That's the plan.
and with money, and we have funds.
Money.
We have
Yes.
2 funds.
Yes, and so people have applied for money to help offset the cost of the program fee and airfare and all of that. And so we're trying to make it as easy as possible for students to come and get this experience. And so we'll be there for about a month for basically all of July. We'll be in Cyprus. It'll be very hot, but we'll be very.
Poor you, Tom. Really.
The site that you can see the site is right next to the ocean, so you can actually see the Mediterranean Sea the whole time. It's nice. It's a good deal. So that's something that I try to also offer students, and hopefully we'll continue to be able to offer in the next for the next at least several years. I'll be going back. There's a lot of work to do there.
So is that about?
I think it's about it. Yeah, I don't know if there's any questions. We're happy
please.
Yeah, happy to answer.
Yeah,
that's why we're here. And it doesn't just have to be about GLAM. If you have questions about Reed in general, ask away.
These guys are the experts. I suppose as people are, again, please put your questions in the chat, is the best way for us to keep them organized. But while people are frantically typing away, I just wanted to ask sort of a really broad question, which is, how is studying ancient Mediterranean studies different at Reed than at other institutions?
Oh, that's a complicated, Tom, should we, okay, can I start?
Yeah, start, please.
So I would say, I think the thing about that makes Reed a little different is in a lot of places you can study the ancient world without studying language. And we believe that even if it's not a lot, it's important to get a sense of language. Why? Because learning how people think and make sense of the world. So we think of language as being integral to the study of the ancient world, whether you're the traditional Greek or Latin major or you're the Hom major. So I say that's one way in which I think we're very different.
Yeah, I would say that we are especially different from a lot of like smaller departments, and that we are really kind of have a nice kind of spread of people as well. You get a good sample of all the different subdisciplines of ancient Mediterranean studies here in a way that you might be able to get at kind of a big state school. I went to University of Michigan for my PhD, and massive numbers of faculty. But at a small liberal arts college, often you have like 3 people, maybe 4, and we have 5 people in our department, and we have an archaeologist, an ancient historian, a Greek literature person, and 2 Latinists. And we get a good spread also in terms of the actually chronological kind of range of what people are interested in. So that's something I think that also really kind of sets us apart, is that we can cover things relatively well, I think, in a way, especially at a small school like Reed, which I think is really great.
I would also say that we are a very healthy department. We have a healthy number of majors. We have healthy numbers in our classes. In other school, I would say in a lot of other schools, classics doesn't have quite the health or vigor that our department has. And we are constantly thinking about our curriculum as well. Tom, you might just want to say a few things, but like we've even started to think about how best to serve students, not just in terms of language, but also making sure that we have enough courses that are in what we call in translation, non-language courses. So we are changing with the times. And also, I think the importance that we've attached to treating the Mediterranean, right, and not just ancient Greece and Rome, I think is also very important.
Yeah. I think that's something especially we've been rethinking our curriculum and expanding it to also be kind of more in line with what a lot of what we do and actually research, because a lot of us we kind of study weird things in the realm of ancient Mediterranean studies, or like classics, right? I mean, I do Ptolemaic Egypt and Cyprus, which is sort of on the fringe. Even Sparta is its own weird kind of deal. It's like strange subdiscipline, right, of Greek studies. And also, I mean, with Apuleius too, and this focus on like imperial Roman literature, we're kind of like have this kind of bigger kind of spread. And so we actually offer, I saw one of the questions here is that, is it possible to take classes in the department if you aren't doing one of the majors? Like, yes, absolutely. You do not have to be a major to take one of the classes. And one of our goals was that with our curricular changes is that we have opening up space for I think at least 4 classes a year that are not language classes, that are open to anyone without any kind of language background. So these are the history and the archaeology courses, but also, like I mentioned, these new courses on Greek and Roman mythology and on ancient Greek athletics. And we're committed to offering these kinds of courses that are going to be to kind of bring people in to the discipline without having to go through Greek and Latin. Though if you want to go through Greek and Latin, you should point that out.
But no, and listen, the non-majors are great. I have a little posse now of STEM students who took my Women in the Ancient World course and are taking and they're like, what are you teaching? And I'm like, Roman history. So and frankly, that's what makes our classes to me fun, is having students come in with a variety of perspectives.
Yeah,
we got a bunch of things in the chat. How should we handle this, Duncan?
Well, so I noticed some of the first questions we got were all about how language works in the department. So there's one question about, can you look at other languages too? There's a question about, how does the focus of language versus versus history specifically here work? And then in the class, well, sorry, go ahead, Ellen.
So one of them was prose versus poetry. So
Mhm.
first of all, for the second year, well, second year's changed. Tom, you might have to.
Yeah, it's gonna change. It's gonna change because this is where we've the way the language sequence works now. Maybe we're good to kind of lay this out. Is that we have you do 111 and 112, which are two courses that are the first year. There's an intermediate course, which is 201. And then you go from 201 to 301, which is like a advanced course, but kind of also like an introduction to kind of approaching literature in addition to the language. And then 302 is an advanced course, which is more, which is a little bit less introductory. It's advanced too, it's more advanced, right? So it's a 5-course sequence now, whereas before we had like a 6-course sequence with a year-long intermediate. So things have shifted a bit. That second year, that intermediate class, I think that part of it's being developed right now. It's going to be offered for the first time, I think, for Latin in the fall. And that's going to be also the idea is to kind of give a sample of both poetry and prose at the same time. And like, certainly, if you go through this whole sequence, you're going to get a good dose of both. Like it's not strictly one or the other. Yeah.
And for the advanced classes, it really depends on who's teaching them, but we always have the advanced. One will usually be poetry, one will be prose. So in the fall, I'm teaching both advanced Greek and advanced Latin. And because I'm an ancient historian, I like teaching historical text, right? But if Sonia were teaching advanced Latin or advanced Greek, she would probably do lit. So in the fall, I'm doing something I've never had the chance to do, and I'm so excited. We're looking at ancient Sparta through the sources. So we're reading a whole bunch of different sources on ancient Sparta, both poetry and prose. And then for advanced Latin, I'm reading a Roman historian. Have any of you ever heard of a guy named Sallust? Writing around the time of Julius Caesar, and he's great. He thinks Rome is basically one giant cesspool, that it's like all the bilge of the world flows into Rome. So he's looking at Rome as Rome is sort of falling apart, and he talks about this is great, the coup. Have any of you ever heard of a guy named Catiline? I mean, can you imagine if Al Gore, if you've ever heard of him, when Al Gore lost his election, if Al Gore was like, screw this, I am burning the place down. This is what this guy Catiline did. He lost an election and he's like, I'm done here. And he wants to sort of destroy Rome. And he's foiled by none other than Cicero, who's a bit of a blowhard. But anyway, but the point is that we always balance prose and poetry, but we're now starting to do different things. Like this semester in advanced Latin, I'm doing a course called Views of Augustus, and we're reading poetry and prose. So we're reading some Horace, some Virgil, some Propertius, but we've also read Suetonius's bits from Suetonius's biography. So by the time you get through the program, you get a nice mix of Greek and Latin, and Tom, you could even tell them about your advanced courses, right? Like the one in Alexandria.
Well, that's the one. Yeah, that's sort of a a gleam. I haven't had a chance to do it.
I mean, exciting.
Yeah, like I want to be able to do a course that's looking at the city of Alexandria through Greek sources, reading sort of literary texts that sort of are produced there, but also sources that describe its founding, all the different kind of the origin myths of the city, and also papyrological sources, so papyrus documents that are actually survived from that time, which talk about the city, and the like. So I mean, I'm very interested in papyri as I'm an archaeologist, but I love documentary texts because these are actual literal letters, tax receipts in the thousands that survive from that time, which you can look at. And so this is sort of my idea in the future to kind of look at. So not again looking at the city through Greek sources, but doing and learning reading the Greek, but it's not just reading it just one text. It'd be kind of trying to get a sense of a city through their sources. I see one question here about are languages limited to Greek and Latin? So those are the languages that we formally offer, that we have our set sequences for. To go through. So we do not formally offer any other ancient languages. People have done informally have managed to wrangle people into doing Sanskrit, I know, in the past, jointly sort of as independent studies. And I certainly have a dream someday of being able to offer, I do Middle Egyptian hieroglyphs, for example, like as part of my training, and I would love to be able to kind of do that at some point, though that would certainly be extra at this point. But Greek and Latin are the core languages we offer, but nothing, I think those also offer a kind of a core understanding of how to approach an ancient language in a way. So you're set to go, if you want to go do hieroglyphs or Coptic or something like that, you're actually like doing one of these languages is actually a really good precursor to doing anything else, because
including
it's
like Sanskrit.
yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, actually
Absolutely.
relates. I saw someone asking about how we explored how they diverged from Greek and Latin. So like historical linguistics kind of stuff. We don't offer historical linguistics course. On occasion, the linguistics department has. I certainly, like in my Greek courses, always try to incorporate some aspect. My intro Greek, I always have a day on Greek and Indo-European, same with Latin, to kind of talk about the way these languages have changed over time, how they relate to each other, looking at different roots of things. And those have always been, I always enjoy doing that, kind of like walking through that. But that, I know Sonia loves doing that kind of like historical linguistic stuff too. So a lot of this is like we have our own kind of personal like interest, which may not be the main focus in the class, but we bring into the class as well, to give people kind of a nice kind of sample of like what's out there.
So there was a question about GLAM and Hum 110. Can we take that? Is that
Absolutely. Yeah.
So this person asked about what are some aspects where GLAM expands? Oh, what you get in Hum 110 is really minimal. Okay. And it's not classics. It really isn't. So GLAM, so Hum 110, you have to remember that syllabus, it used to be a whole semester. It used to be the entire year was classics, was the ancient world. Now, really, it's the fall, but the fall has what? I mean, and Tom, you can talk about the Egyptian parts, but on the Greek parts, you're skimming the surface. So I will tell you this because I teach, I'm the Greek historian. This is what I do. And when my students come to my Greek history class from Hum 110, shall we say, there's a lot that they do not know. I mean, it's not a classics course. It's a sort of, it's a humanities course, right? They're asking different kinds of questions with a different kind of focus.
Yeah, that's what I would say too. Like, you come into, you get kind of like an introduction to like the text themselves in Hum 110, but you're also approaching them from a very different kind of angle than you would in an ancient Mediterranean studies course, including I mean, you're just reading them differently. You're talking about them differently. They're put into a very different kind of context, and certainly like the Hum 110 is not classics. It's not ancient Mediterranean studies. It's its own kind of thing. And so I agree with like Ellen. A lot of people, like I've taught an ancient Egyptian history and culture course before. It's been a number of years now, but that also, in Hum 110, you get a couple of days on Egypt, you get a smattering of texts, and then you have a difference between that and a whole course, which goes into the 3,000 plus year history of the place. It's a very different kind of experience. And so, yeah, I would say it, rather than thinking about it sort of expanding on sort of like the Humanities 110, it is really kind of a different kind of experience, I think. I would say very, very different there.
Are you two both teaching in Humanities 110 right now?
No.
Not right now. I'm not in this year.
Okay.
The two people, Nigel and Alice, are in this year, and I think they're in next year as well.
Next year too.
Next year, they're the two in the department. Generally, we have two people in Hum 110 in a given year. I've done lectures for Hum 110 though. I had three or four lectures this year in Hum 110. Though, so occasionally we do kind of, even though if we're not in the course, we do contribute in that way.
Totally. Right on. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, the next one down on the list is what is GLAM's approach to studying literature? Can you guys speak to that in a philosophical sense?
So I think we should, again, so I'm going to talk about advanced because second year's changed. You have to think about the advanced courses, as I said, as again, Tom being an archaeologist, his advanced courses may have more of an archaeological bent, mine may be more historical. And then the others will be teaching, let's say, more literary focused courses. But one of the things that link all these courses is that you're not just reading a text or a set of texts, but you're also reading scholarship about these texts, right? So let's say, for example, if I were teaching an advanced course on, like I'm doing right now on Augustus, right? That you may be reading some Propertius, several elegies by Propertius. I may in tandem assign an article, right? That gives you an idea of how scholars are thinking about what's going on in that elegy. So it's not simply about studying, the text, but it's also about studying how, in a sense, remember, we're talking about texts that people have been talking about for a long time. So in a sense, what you're doing when you are entering our department, you're entering a very long, rich conversation with people who came before us about the text that we're studying. So that becomes a very important part of what we do in our advanced courses as well. Tom?
Yeah, I think with the upper level courses, especially, again, it very much depends on kind of who's the professor. I know like Nigel would bring a much more of a kind of a literary theory kind of bent to what he's doing, because that's something that he's interested in. And I, as an archaeologist, will not be doing that. I would not be doing literary theory because it's like that's not something I'm expert in. But I would, like when I've taught an upper level course on Herodotus, for example, I did one on book 2, which is his long book that's all about Egypt. And so I taught it both as a kind of an example of an ethnography and also looking at as a historical source for trying to understand like what Egypt is like in this period when he's going. And so I pulled in other sources, including Egyptian language sources, which they didn't read in Egyptian, obviously, but they read like when he talks about Amasis and his drinking parties and how Amasis is this huge party animal. I brought in the Demotic source, which is a story about King Amasis and his hangover, right? So it's like also showing like where is he getting this information, trying to evaluate him, like where exactly does he how trustworthy is he exactly, to what degree, where is he getting his information, what's the vision of Egypt he's giving us. And I had them read some inscriptions as well of Greeks in Egypt that were at that time. This famous one of a Greek mercenary left an inscription on Ramses II's knee at Abu Simbel. And so I gave them the text and do some basic epigraphy. And one of them loved it so much, they got it tattooed on their ankle, which was weird. But they did, they got it. They thought there was a bad joke in it. They thought it was hilarious. And so they had it tattooed on their ankle, which was, I guess it's a lasting impact of that course. So,
but same. So, when I teach, so for example, and I teach Herodotus too, right? My course looks very different from Tom's. I focus much more on the development of historical consciousness in the ancient world. I look at very different sections of the text. When I teach Thucydides, I don't know if you've ever heard of Thucydides, brilliant 5th century Athenian historian. I bring in a lot of political science. I also bring in modern literature where you have people talking about Thucydides in terms of people writing about Thucydides vis-a-vis the US's relationship with China. That has become an issue in current thinking. So really, what's really lovely about the department, and Tom said this, I think what's a great strength in our department is how much range we have. You have 5 people who could all be looking at the same body of literature, but asking very, very different questions and bringing very different sets of expertise to bear on the same things. So even between me and Tom, when we hired Tom, I was so thrilled because Tom covers, between the two of us, we cover lots of years of history, Tom, right?
Mm-hmm.
And large chunks of the Mediterranean. And Tom's skills are very different from mine. I'm more literary focused. Tom's much more material culture focused. So that's really the beauty of the department. And where you really see that is in our senior theses, where students write on the most wild assortment of topics, birth control in the ancient world, or classics in film and modern film. Tom, my God, if you think of all the topics our students write on.
Yeah. I've had things from my first thesis was one on the perception of childhood in Roman North Africa, was looking at legal texts, documents, grave stela, and actual archaeological information of like children's graves and looking at how childhood was conceived in North Africa at that time. I've also done one that was on magical texts. This was a religion, ancient Mediterranean studies thesis on magical texts, and how those were used, and curse tablets and things like this, which are always fun to read. Completely nuts. And
Oh,
also,
yeah, and
yeah,
we
go
have
ahead.
traditional ones like Homer. I keep
Yeah.
having, I have recently had 3 theses, but one on slave women in Homer, which was spectacular,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, no, and I did a Virgil thesis too, right? Because like people can kind of do whatever. Like we had a recent graduate also did a one on reception of classical imagery and myth in modern poetry, and it was really excellent. It was
Beautiful.
fantastic.
Yeah.
And I had one on identity and late antique Britain, sort of like post-Roman Britain, getting into like Anglo-Saxon period stuff. So it really does run the gamut, and we try to help people, kind of direct people to topics that are doable, but are also like what your interest is. Like it's not like you're going to come and say you have to do something on Homer. No. If you want to do Homer, that's great, because I love Homer, right? It's fantastic. But if you're like, we want to help you craft a thesis topic that is like, that you're going to want to live with for a year, because you're going to have to, that you're going to enjoy with the work you're doing. And so we try to really help with that.
Awesome. Those examples are awesome. Those always make me so excited. It like makes me want to be a Reed student again and write my thesis all over again. We have another question about community, I believe. So this student is asking, how do you get sort of attached and dedicated to specific departments at Reed? So as you mentioned earlier, right, students can take classes in all the departments at Reed. You don't need to major in a specific department in order to take those classes. But in terms of community, how do you see, non-majors being a part of your community? Ellen, you mentioned your posse. What do those people bring to the classroom, that sort of thing?
Oh my God. I mean, so again, so this is my course last semester on women in the ancient world, which I have to tell you was like beyond fun. I had 24 people in there, more than half of which were not from GLAM. We're talking chemistry, economics, poli-sci. And I think what really creates community is, remember, this is not a lecture. This is what makes Reed really, really different. And I've taught at other places, so I got to be clear about what really sets Reed apart. You're not being lectured to. Lecturing is actually easy. I used to give lectures to hundreds of people before I came to Reed. But when you come to Reed, it's not a lecture. You are in a seminar where you are part of the conversation. So 22, 24 people is a relatively small group. And I had people who were unbelievably passionate. Like one of the texts that we read, I was so shocked how students loved it. Roman historian Ovid wrote letters. Can you imagine? He wrote these fictional letters from heroines to the men in their lives. There's one from Penelope to Odysseus. My favorite is from Dido to Aeneas. She had like killed herself. Anyway, they're amazing. So the students, what was great in that class is it didn't matter whether you were a GLAM person or not. We're all reading the text together, and people were bringing their different areas of interest and expertise, and really bonded as a group. And I'll tell you what was so heartening to me was the number of students who were like, God, if I'd taken GLAM earlier, maybe I would have majored. But I said, it doesn't matter. You can be a major in whatever other department. So I have a number of these people who are going to take Roman history with me. Really different from women in the ancient world. I hope they're not. It's not. It's a lot about fighting death and mayhem. But the point is that in all of your classes, right? I hope that you all find lots of things you're desperately passionate about. But if you're wondering how to pick a major, it should be something. I always tell students, find something that answers the questions that you have. Like, what are the questions that are really driving you? And what major do you think will help you answer those questions? And for most of you, there's not one major that's going to, right? I mean, it could be different majors, but the beauty is that you can major in one and still dabble in the others, right? Sorry to blab on. I'll let Tom.
No, no, no. I mean, just in terms of, I mean, I've had cores of like these kind of groups of biology students as well, who just kind of like who always like who take like both my archaeology classes, and sort of like they've become sort of like some of my favorite students actually. And I think like my archaeology classes are often like, you know, majority non-majors. They're opened up to everybody. And my death and burial class right now is definitely, I think, like, you know, more than 3/4 across both sections are like, so 30 students who are not, you know, GLAM majors. Maybe they're thinking about it because they're first years, but they're not declared. And it's really great to get this perspective of like, especially in that class, it was great because I had people who do like, who were specializing in like biology and, you know, genetics and things. And one of the things we were reading was about the use of ancient DNA evidence, reading scientific studies of, you know, doing about kinship of these two mummies, for example. And I also had people there who could also like assess, was like, hey, this actually looks like this was a really well done study. This one wasn't. And they could also help the people who weren't like experts in that kind of thing do. It was a really kind of truly kind of interdisciplinary kind of experience. It was so that was really great. And so it's been, I really like having not just like kind of a nice breadth, like kind of spread of people, of backgrounds and disciplinary kind of outlooks, because I think it really enriches the experience for everyone in the class, for sure.
Absolutely. One of the great benefits of a tight-knit community like Reed, I think. And I think we're so it's 4:51. We're sort of winding down our time here. I like to ask at the end a sort of like broad wrap-up question. So answer this any way you like. To both of you, what is one thing you love about Reed?
Tom, you go first. I'm like pondering which one.
One thing I love about Reed. I really do love how I can, well, I usually get two things. One, I love that I can, how much closely I do get to work with students on their projects in class, that I can talk to them. And it's been in a way that's not sort of very professor student, right? Like it's much more like they're kind of like, you know, like I can't talk to them, right? Which I like this kind of cultivating a much more kind of informal kind of relationship with students that allows for a better kind of conversation. And I think that's something that I really value here. I also really like that I can, in our classes, we can read things that are long and difficult. Students will do it because they want to have that conversation. They don't try to, you know, here's a really difficult article about sort of like population genetics and ancient Roman stuff, and people will kind of go into it and really kind of try to pick it apart. And it was like in a way that, you know, their eyes don't just glaze over, they actually really try to engage with it. And I think that's something I really do value about Reed. It allows me as a professor to do a lot more in my classes here than I have been able to do elsewhere.
Here. So, and I can answer that by telling you a very quick story. What I love about Reed students is how so weirdly intellectually engaged they are. And a great example I had when I was first chair of the department, this is a long time ago now, I thought I was so organized. I got our whole schedule together and I realized I had double booked myself so that my course, I couldn't even believe what a screw up this was, which meant that I had to move an advanced Greek course to start at 8:30 in the morning. Now, 8:30 in the morning, as you can imagine, is not a very popular time for college students. And this was an advanced Greek course on Herodotus. And I was worried the students wouldn't be excited. I'll never forget, I'm sitting in my office and I hear two of our majors run down the hall screaming. This is at 8:20 in the morning. Did you read that article she assigned on the first 5 lines of Herodotus? That was the coolest thing I'd ever read. And I'm sitting there thinking, no, nowhere in the universe could I have ever imagined 2 students running down the hall at 8:25 in the morning, screaming about how they love this one article. If you take my advanced course, I'm going to do Herodotus in the next so many years. It is a very cool. It's an article where the word history comes from, the Greek historiae. Now, if that's Reed, that's nothing that I can imagine being replicated anywhere else. I taught at Bowdoin. That was my first job. I taught at the University of Iowa. And Reed, listen, Reed's not for everybody, but for the students for Reed, you know, for whom Reed works, it's a really amazing place that way in terms of students who are really here to dig in, as Tom said, and become really engaged. And that's very exciting for a professor.
That's a great story. I love that story. Okay, well, thank you guys so much for all of your great info. I love hearing professors talk about their departments and teaching. It's just such a fascinating discussion. To everybody in all the prospective students with us today, if you guys have more questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Ellen, Tom, if you guys feel comfortable putting your emails in the chat, that would be great. I'm going to put 2 of my own in the chat. These are how to get in touch with us in the admission office. So your admission counselors are all reachable at admission@reed.edu. That's me and all of my colleagues. And then you can also get in touch with current students. So write a reedy at reed.edu. And so feel free to ask about any specific part of the Reed experience. Please take a screenshot or write down these emails because they will sort of poof away when I close the session. But thank you guys so much for your time. All of you, professors, you too, thank you so much.
Thank you. And if any of you end up coming to Reed, please stop by. I would love to see you in the fall.
Absolutely. Thank you all for coming.
Yeah, really.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.